Boop. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. Today's texts are Psalm 134, Exodus 24, 1 through 11, and John 21, 1 through 14. That's right at the very end of the Gospel of John. Today, I'm going to focus on that text. And I want to talk about getting back to normal. Let me ask you this: Have you ever tried to get back to normal? Whatever that means. After a major life-changing event, and I don't, maybe it was a positive thing. Maybe it was something really big and really good that happened in your life, but maybe it was kind of a negative thing, and it could have been not just a negative thing for you, but it could have been a negative thing for everyone you know. Maybe that's kind of something that you've had to deal with. It could have been dealing with divorce. Maybe you had a divorce in your family. Maybe it was your parents. Maybe it was yours. Could have been severe illness. Could have been injury. It could have been a death in the family, or a death of someone very close to you. Maybe a friend that was almost family. When those things happen, sometimes the only thing that we can think about doing is getting back to normal. And we try to get back to normal, but, we just want to get back to doing what we were always doing. That's kind of going to be our boat anchor and our normal for us. But then we do it, and then somehow doing what you've always done doesn't seem to be the thing to do. It's just kind of this weird experience that happens to us when we try to get back to normal. We go back to doing what we've always done, but somehow now it just kind of seems empty and void. It's this weird world that you live in now, where it kind of seems normal, but at the same time it doesn't seem normal. But you do it anyway because you don't really know what else to do. Things have been so odd and so turned on their head that the only thing you can think to do is just go back to doing what you're doing, because you don't know what else to do. That's where I think we find the disciples in this chapter, 21st chapter of John here. They've come through this whirlwind of events that we call the Passion and the Resurrection, and they've seen Jesus. We're told that this starts off after these things. Jesus showed himself again to the disciples, so that sets up the story that John is sharing with us at this point of Jesus and his experience and his life with the disciples. But we're also told that Peter just decided to go fishing. That's all he could think to do. That's where Jesus finds him, right? When Jesus finds or calls Peter the first time, you see this in Mark chapter 1, and then also in Matthew chapter 4. He finds him by the lake fishing. That was his job. He was a fisherman, so he just wants to get back to normal, get out of the house, and go back to doing his job, and then that'll make everything right. And then he tells the guys, he's like, "I'm going fishing, boys," and they all go fishing with him. Let's go fishing. That seems normal. That seems like the right thing to do. And they go back, and that's what they've always done. You can't blame them for that. It's kind of their, I guess, port in the storm. But they go back to doing what they've always been doing, but what they've always been doing doesn't seem like the right thing to do. And John tells us that they go out and they go fishing, and they're out there all night and they don't catch anything. Now, if this sounds familiar to you, it should. This is the way that Luke tells the story of Jesus meeting Peter and calling him to follow him. And the story should sound even more familiar from there. So they go out, they've caught nothing, and like I said, that's really just how Jesus found them, according to Luke. Jesus walks up in Luke, and they haven't caught anything, and Jesus sends them back out onto the water. So that's where we are in John. And now we have this great thing, is enter the familiar stranger. The familiar stranger, the idea of the familiar stranger is pretty prevalent in ancient literature. They're known, but still unknown to the people that they meet or they come across. There's a familiarity, but the people can't quite place them. And their appearance, in ancient literature, when you read stories, their appearance marks it's a portent of great things about to, or big changes about to happen, not necessarily good. I'm thinking of it in a play called Electra, which is an ancient Greek play, and I'm not going to tell you about the whole story. You should go read it, especially if you're a person who likes plays and stuff or likes literature. Go dig up Electra. I think it's Euripides that wrote it. But anyway, there's this kind of the familiar stranger that shows up in the play, and not so good things happen. Good things happen here in John, though. So, like I said, the familiar stranger shows up in the midst of uncertainty, and that's exactly what Jesus does here. So, here are the disciples. They don't know what else to do. They want to just get back to normal. They want to go back to doing what they've always done. But what they've always done doesn't seem like the thing to do. And when they go back to doing what they've always done, it just comes back empty and void. It feels normal, but it doesn't feel normal, and they're not getting anything back for it. That's where Jesus shows up. Jesus shows up as God's presence always does in the midst of uncertainty. And he makes himself known to the disciples. In the same way that God always makes himself known to people who have forgotten him or don't quite recognize him in the midst of uncertain times. God's presence in the midst of uncertainty makes itself known in his familiar actions, right? Through guiding our steps, through setting a table for us, and then inviting us to eat with him. That's exactly what Jesus does here. The disciples don't know what else to do, so they just go back to doing what they're always doing. It's not working out, and Jesus gives them directions. He guides their steps, tells them, okay, you fished on that side of the boat. Go back to fishing on this side of the boat. Should sound familiar, like I said. That's Luke 5. And it's in doing that they suddenly come to this realization. At least Peter does. And Peter jumps head first. He dresses for the occasion, and he jumps head first into the water and heads straight to the shore, because now he knows who this stranger is, this familiar stranger. And he gets to the shore, and Jesus has set a table for Peter and the other disciples, and he invites them to sit and come and eat with him. Sometimes you can't get back to normal. But the greatest normal thing in our world is this familiar and unfamiliar God who makes himself known to us in the midst of uncertainty in very familiar ways. So, you might not be able to get back to normal, but there's always going to be this table that's set for you by this very familiar God. So, have a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.